Hello, and welcome to the Composer of the Month series brought to you by the Composers Society of Singapore. I am Peg Im, EXCO member of CSS. Today, I will be sharing more about local composer Christopher Sim as well as some of his works.
Hello everybody, I am Christopher Sim. I'm a Singaporean composer and I've been composing music since I was 9 years old. It's been a long time. So my first question is, tell us more about your musical background and composition style. So I started playing piano when I was 5 years old. In fact, back then, if I recall, I didn't really care about how it sounded like. I just loved the feeling of my hands smashing the piano, the keyboard. And I thought to myself that, you know what, I wanted to do songwriting. I wanted to write music. And my parents are like, what the heck are you doing? But I had supportive parents. I'm largely self-taught. I first learned composition on my own when I was 9 years old. The first few pieces I began listening to was Chopin and Bach. And to this day, I still love their music. More on Bach. So my style is traditional, actually. I don't regard myself as an avant-garde composer per se, but when I do compose music that is avant-garde, I tend to include a lot of traditional elements from Baroque and Romantic era genres. Why I do this is not necessarily because I'm not here to say that I don't innovate or I don't like new things. Rather, I want to revive what is the old, what is seen as archaic. To me, learning about your history also brings about new ideas. Case in point, I went to Tanzania back in 2010. It was a school trip, and over there we went to Serengeti National Park, I believe. We were privileged enough to visit a Maasai village, and the Maasai people performed a dance. I believe it's called the Adama. So this dance itself involves jumping. So men will traditionally jump as high as possible so that it attracts somebody of the opposite sex. Now, to me, that was really fascinating because of the rhythms, the music that came out of it. In fact, in my magnus opus, Arusha Symphony No. 1 for full orchestra, I included a lot of Maasai tunes in there. Now, I think my style of music is not only taking what is old, but also taking what is popular and then turning into a very classical rendition of that particular culture. Now, somebody once asked me, Chris, is this cultural appropriation? Are you taking this? No, I disagree. Because for me, before I even incorporate a certain cultural element into some form of literature, or in this case, music or art form, I always study and read about the history of this certain ethnic group. I believe that having this understanding and writing a music that is informed of the history of that particular culture is a form of honor for that culture. And that is what I truly believe in writing a lot of the music. I don't just want to do avant-garde or traditional music. I want music that hybridizes a lot of these elements. In the same way, the New World, or even Singapore for that matter, is a melting pot. It's like rojak. You take so many ingredients from elsewhere and then put it together. The first few people are going to say, is this cultural appropriation? This is a calamity. But this is what I also love, it's this calamity that slowly becomes a form of appreciation. So that is what my music expresses. There will be enjoyable moments, but also there's moments of tension. And in this piece, there are 4 movements. Some movements are more traditional in terms of the classical, Western classical tradition, and in other cases, it is more akin to avant-garde, atonality, and All right, next question. Share with us how your musical engraving expertise has helped in your composition and or vice versa. So I've been working with Avik Chari, who used to be the orchestral librarian for the Singapore Symphony Orchestra. Now, I've learned a lot from him. I actually first met him in person during a 2023 music engraving workshop for Composer Society of Singapore. Now, since then, I have been doing a lot of projects with him involving engraving. So we will be given handwritten scores or existing scores. It could be Sibelius files. And we would then clean up the scores, make them presentable. We present parts. So to me, to answer the question more directly on how it influenced my composition style, it really did not influence that much. But what it did influence is the way that I present my scores. When I present my scores, I sometimes ask myself, like, how will a musician interpret that as a player? So a musician is going to see that passage and then say, okay, there is so many articulation marks, or maybe there's a lot of information on it, versus the next piece being something that has very little information on it, such as Baroque writing, where there's actually a lot of inferences. So yes, it really helped. I think the most important thing I learned about engraving is when you engrave, you make sure your engraving is accurate to the interpretation that you want. Because very often, and I think this is something I also learned in school, is that if you don't engrave well and your players come up to you with limited rehearsal time, they're going to ask a lot of questions, especially in parts that are not clear. So you want to be clear and accurate, because in that limited time, you want to get your piece recorded or performed or practiced. It's important to be efficient. And I believe engraving is not just an art form of beautiful score making, but it's also about functionality and efficiency. And then we have our next question. Do you have any upcoming projects, works that we can look forward to? So currently I am working with the Composer Society of Singapore. I am leading a project between CSS and the Ministry of Culture in Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia has this music wing called Saudi Music Hub, and it's being headed by the Armenian conductor Gevorg Sargsyan. We are trying to get composers from Singapore to fly over to Saudi Arabia on a short-term residency program, and there will be workshops and seminars and performances at various venues and different cities. The key here is cultural exchange, but also as part of a social objective is to get people in Saudi Arabia who often don't have access to music. So Saudi Arabia itself has a lot of growth and potential, but also it has a very conservative society that is changing with the time. Many rural areas, especially outside the main cities of Riyadh and Jeddah, you will have families who are very conservative. So what we want to do is CSS to present music opportunities for these people, especially youth coming from these places, to be able to learn formal music that is being taught internationally. But at the same time, it is also a reciprocal arrangement where we ourselves learn more about Middle Eastern music, like Arabic, Makab, and more. It's also an opportunity for us to listen to Arab performances or Peninsular Arab performances from that side. So that is one of the major projects I'm currently doing. Other things and projects that I'm currently doing are orchestration. So I love orchestration. It's a passion project. I have, in fact, orchestrated Prokofiev's Piano Sonata No. 6, and I am currently orchestrating Shostakovich's String Quartet No. 8. So that is going to be pretty fun. And last question, what are some words of advice that you would like to share with younger composers? My advice is this: network and personal branding. You see, perhaps one of the greater weaknesses of many composers today is that we are so reserved, we're introverted, and very often our music language is so personal that we sometimes don't go out, or we don't know how to necessarily express ourselves. And even if we could, it is very hard to relate. So what I've been doing in the last couple of months is improving my personal branding and also improving my image and how I present myself to people. One of them is to say that, okay, I'm a composer, but what I want to also share with people are how am I relevant to the current industries, the present times, and why my music itself is related to the people. And I think it goes back to why I tend to be more traditional composer. I'm not trying to say that you can only find success through what is a popular medium, but it's finding a niche and then being an expert or a specialist of that field. So for me, I stand out from the new avant-garde composers for being a bit more traditional, but I stand out from other traditional musicians because I still have some element of avant-garde in it, in addition to incorporating a lot of world music into my music. So the thing is, to me, I don't want to limit myself to just being strictly a composer. I want to be a presenter in such a way that makes me relatable to people. So for young composers, personal branding, being able to tell a story that is not just about your technical skills as a composer, but also how people interpret you. Be out there, cast your net wide, and people will come to you. New projects, new business opportunities. So yeah, that's my advice for young composers. Update your LinkedIn, your socials, and look cool. Thank you very much. This is Christopher Sim. Thank you for featuring me at Composer of the Month. Pek Yin, back to you.
Thank you for watching the video. Do like, share and subscribe to our social media pages in order to get more updates. See you soon for the next series of the Composer of the Month in May. Bye!